subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon for more interesting and bone-chilling stories.
On the tempest-racked night of October 13, 2001, with a lantern which cast eerie shadows, I stood digging alone and foolishly in the grave of John Anderson. I had started digging in the afternoon because a thunderstorm was brewing, and now that it was dark and the storm had unleashed its fury upon the densely overgrown foliage, I found solace in the chaos. My mind had been shaken by recent events since August 20th, the haunting shadow in the manor, the constant strain and disappointments, and the inexplicable incident that occurred in the nearby village during a storm in September. After that incident, I buried a body of someone whose death remained a mystery to me. I knew that others wouldn't understand it either, so I let them believe that Arthur Monroe had simply vanished. Despite their search efforts, they found nothing. The local villagers might have suspected something, but I couldn't afford to further frighten them. I myself felt strangely detached from it all. The shock I experienced in the manor had somehow affected my mind, and now I could only think of one thing: the pursuit of a horror that had grown into an overwhelming obsession in my imagination. A pursuit that Arthur Monroe's fate compelled me to undertake in silence and solitude. The scene of my excavation work would have unsettled any ordinary man. Enormous and grotesque ancient trees loomed above me like pillars of a sinister druidic temple, muffling the thunder, silencing the howling wind, and allowing only a drizzle of rain to fall. Through the scarred trunks in the background, faint flashes of lightning illuminated the damp, ivy-covered stones of the abandoned mansion. Closer still was the desolate Dutch garden, its pathways and flower beds overrun by a white, foul-smelling, overgrown vegetation that thrived in perpetual darkness. And nearest of all was the graveyard, where misshapen trees twisted their branches as their roots disturbed unhallowed tombstones and fed on the venomous substances that lay beneath. Occasionally, amidst the decaying leaves that covered the forest floor, I could discern the ominous outlines of the low mounds that dotted the lightning-stricken landscape. History had led me to this ancient grave. It was history that consumed my thoughts, as everything else had crumbled into a twisted semblance of diabolical rituals. I now believed that the lurking fear was not of this world but a spectral presence that rode on the midnight lightning. And based on the local legends and stories I had uncovered during my search with Arthur Monroe, I believed that the ghost belonged to Samuel Harrow, who died in 1751. That's why I found myself digging senselessly in his grave. The Harrow Estate was built in 1650 by Jonathan Harrow, a prosperous merchant from the colonial town of Ashford. Disenchanted with the changing times under British rule, he sought solace in the wilderness and constructed the magnificent mansion atop a secluded hill that offered breathtaking views. The only downside to this location was the frequent and violent thunderstorms that plagued the area during the summer months. While Jonathan initially attributed these storms to a peculiar year, he soon realized that the place was inherently prone to such phenomena. Eventually, the relentless storms began to affect his health, so he decided to convert the cellar into a safe haven where he could seek refuge from the tempest's fury. Little is known about the subsequent generations of the Harrow family, as they grew up with a deep-seated hatred for English civilization and avoided any contact with those who embraced it. Their lives were secluded and their isolation led to a decline in their communication skills and comprehension. All members of the family shared a peculiar hereditary trait: mismatched eyes. It was said that this trait was a sign of their connection to the supernatural forces that surrounded them. The locals whispered tales of dark rituals performed by the Harrow family, conjuring storms and communing with otherworldly entities. These rumors only added to the mystery and dread that surrounded the Harrow estate. As I continued digging, the rain intensified, turning the soil into a muddy mess. Suddenly, my shovel hit something solid. With trembling hands, I cleared away the dirt to reveal an ancient wooden coffin. It was adorned with strange symbols and inscriptions, which I couldn't decipher. My heart raced with anticipation and fear as I pried open the lid. Inside, I found the remains of Samuel Harrow, perfectly preserved. His eyes, mismatched in color, seemed to stare back at me with a malevolent gleam, It was then that I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on my neck. I turned, and there, in the flickering light of the lantern, stood a shadowy figure. Who dares disturb my rest? A deep, hollow voice echoed through the night. I seek answers. I stammered, my voice barely audible over the roaring storm. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself to be a spectral apparition, its features contorted with rage. You shall have your answers, mortal. The ghostly voice boomed. But be warned, the knowledge you seek comes at a price. Before I could respond, the ghostly figure vanished, leaving me alone in the graveyard, drenched in rain and paralyzed with fear. The wind howled through the trees, and I knew that my life would never be the same again. As the rain poured down and the thunder crashed above, I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a grave mistake in disturbing the restless spirits of the Harrow Estate. Little did I know that my search for answers would plunge me into a world of darkness and horror, where the line between reality and the supernatural would blur beyond recognition. And so, my journey into the depths of the Harrow family's secrets had only just begun, with Samuel Harrow's ghost as my guide, and the looming shadows of the past closing in around me.